It's the same location. Just worked with the landowner on some communication about putting the sheep away for a night or two. Put them over there in a safe spot. Made our sets. Paid off. We still got more sets to check in the back here, so should have the whole pack, but this is a good start. She killed quite a few?
Quite a few.
Quite a few sheep?
I mean,
how many do you think she's killed?
We're talking 37 animals.
Yeah. So something like that can...
period of April till now.
They can hit you right in the pocketbook, can it? And it's town, so nobody's really hunting them. It's right in the middle of everything, so it's an old one. We'll get her taken care of. All right, you guys. It's out here on a. There was something killing chickens. Came out and set up. There's a snare right here. You just saw that double on skunks up on the hill there, and I'd already pulled 2 or 3 other skunks out of here, and what they thought was killing chickens was a fox. Look at that right there. Hell yeah. That is job over. I don't think I'll pull them for a couple days because it looks like we got the male here. They run in pairs, so might get another one. That's awesome. These big storm fronts, they move right before the storms, so I knew today might be a good day. What a beautiful sucker. Chicken killing over. Maybe. We'll see. Alright. Got a lot more traps to go today, so. Shoot. I just looked up over the hill here. I got another damn skunk. That's 3 skunks. No. I'm wrong. I saw the fluffy part. You're seeing it live, just as live as I'm seeing it. That is not a skunk. Look at that pretty red. We got him. That's a pair right there. Beautiful. I can't trap fox, but I can sure snare them. That's all I've ever been able to do with fox. They're hard to catch. That's awesome. Chicken killing over. Again, it's pretty bad hombre. Killing goats, killing chickens. Right here he was coming out of that cow pasture, and right here he was jumping, landing right here, and I put a foothold in. We got him. Can't tell how big he is. I just shot him from a distance away right there. Looks like a hind foot. Beautiful. Wasn't going nowhere. Job finished. It took 2 weeks to get that done. Damn.
More people are going to create their dream wildlife job in the next few years than they have in all of human history. Wildlife vacancies are absurdly competitive, but if you do what other successful people do, you eventually get the job. The Practical Animal channel is a platform for interviews. It documents wildlife industries and the jobs they create, providing a career roadmap. Watch this video for an excellent summary of what it takes to be a trapper. So, if career success for you means finding your niche out west, how do you get there? J.D. Brock is the founder and director of Northern Advantage Wildlife Control in Idaho. He started his career as a hunting guide, then went on to develop his business to include animal damage control trapping. If you're learning English as a second language, This video will be useful because you'll hear two accents, a British and an American one. And before we go any further, I would like to say thank you for subscribing. Without you, there would be no channel. Harvesting fur bearers is not for the squeamish, and neither is this video. Tight chains, everyone. JD, what jobs are there in predator and pest control?
So like over here, it's kind of yeah, it's a job in itself. I don't know that we really break it down into too many more parts. There's two types, I guess. You could say there's pest control people. They do bugs and stuff mostly, and they do small animal removal and exclusions. There's all kinds of like levels of that. And then what I am is basically I'm a trapper that does uh, wildlife work with them. I don't know. I never really tried to describe that before, but it's I'm mostly working with not bugs. Anything else bigger? You know, I live in a kind of a unique type of area. The West is different than even Central America or East, as you probably know. So, like in the East, they have a lot more options. Out here, we're very limited. You only kind of are able to do one type of thing, and that's predator control and any other wildlife removal is very limited.
JD, can you give us a few examples of the types of predator you deal with? I take it we're talking coyote, black bear?
Yeah. So we got big game animals and we got fur bearers. That's their classification. A big game animal is like a black bear and a cougar and which would be a mountain lion or a wolf. Those are dealt with at a little higher level, usually a federal level. USDA trappers deal with them. Um, what I can do as a private trapper, so I used to be federal, but I'm private now. As a private trapper, I don't deal with those unless, say, Fish and Game specifically, our Fish and Game department specifically brings me in on it as a subcontractor or something to that effect. But I will deal with the fur bearers on down as far as predators go. Now, wolves, they classify as both. I can do whatever I need to do with wolves. They're kind of in their own thing. But my main ones, coyotes, deal with a lot of coyotes, a lot of fox, and then all your smaller stuff like badgers and everything down to skunk and uh, any of your regular fur bears, muskrat, beaver. Beaver's probably one of my next to a coyote. Beaver's my most interaction in my particular area. The ecosystems around here got a lot of experience with the beaver causing problems with the agriculture.
Mm-hmm. And JD, how does what you do fit in with what's called the North American model of wildlife conservation? Because I understand that's the envy of the world as a wildlife model. How does what you do fit into that?
You bet. It should be. It's a good model for sure. It's taken a long time to get to where we're at. We've had a long time to see the successes and failures way before you and I's time. Really, it's come a long ways. How it fits in is instead of people just going out and doing whatever they want and say killing animals or taking them off and moving them without any kind of forward thought or any kind of study as to how they're going to go about it. Now we have pretty strict rules that we go by, and but also there's a second factor where it's not just all rules. It's more importantly, we have proven what works and what don't. So the trappers um, are, at least we're in my area, the West in general, we're very like-minded with the more proven methods of how we go about it, what happens to these animals, because like killing them's not always the answer, and we're pretty proud of that fact. We have successful relocation programs. We have all kinds of there's a method for whatever we need to do. We're pretty far along in doing what's best for the animal and the people. Oh, he's a barker. Good looking dog. Check day 6, I think. It's not all about extermination, so we're pretty happy with that.
That's great. JD, how did your career develop?
Just like most guys in my or folks in my industry, I started trapping young, and it kind of goes from there. I only decided to sit down and make a business out of it about 8 years ago. We moved back to an area that I knew pretty well. Didn't have a wildlife control officer that I could tell. It just seemed like the second somebody found out you were at least a fur trapper, you were getting calls. So I figured there was a little niche there, and I was right. I took the risk on some equipment, and a lot deeper than it looks. Get out there too far. Oh, might have got the big female. That's what I was after. If I catch that big female, I'll be happy with that. We can move on. Let these ones grow up a little bit. We're getting down to that time of year where I don't want to get any more kits. Oh yeah, it's a good one. I'd say that's probably a big female for sure. There you go. Just like that. A little extra try, and in my area, you got to be pretty social. You got to know people and talk to people, and don't be afraid to make phone calls or knock on doors, but stay hooked in the community's problems. And if you can do that, you get along pretty good. It's the same location. Just worked with the landowner on some communication about putting the sheep away for a night or two. Put them over there in a safe spot. Made our sets. Paid off. We still got more sets to check in the back here, so should have the whole pack, but this is a good start. She killed quite a few.
Quite a few.
Quite a few sheep.
I mean,
how many do you think she's killed?
We're talking 37 animals.
Yeah. So something like that can.
Period of April till now.
They can hit you right in the pocketbook, can it? And it's towns, so nobody's really hunting them. It's right in the middle of everything, so it's an old one. We'll get her taken care of.
You're a trapper, JD. What skills do you need?
Oof, that is number one, read an animal sign. Found me a little pocket of activity here. Feds come up and wreck their old lodge, so I think that's the new one right there. I got 6 today. Let's see how many more left in here. And now we trudge. I think the big ones kind of float. All right, here we go.
when you're a fur trapper, you can take a guess, and you're in a specific spot. If you're along a creek or a field edge, or if you're in the mountains and in a canyon, you can kind of set a set that's a positive set that's going to catch whatever comes by, and whatever comes by is probably going to be something you want. But when you're doing wildlife control, you have to know exactly what's going on. You have to know uh, why you're there, and you can't always, unfortunately, you can't always listen to the client. You have to listen to them, but you can't take their word at exactly what it is. You have to investigate yourself. That'd be like, when the cops show up and everybody says it was that guy, he went that way. That you can't do that. You got to be just dead on, because there's what we call bycatch is always a concern. So that means, especially in town or in the around houses and people, farms and ranches, you've got dogs, you got cats, you've got all kinds of little other creatures that are not doing anything wrong. So you have to know exactly what caused the issue, what killed the chicken or the calf or the whatever their issue is, and whatever's chewing on a building or something, and then make that set. So tracking, in short, tracking is the number one skill, and it's a dying thing. Like, you wouldn't believe how many trappers out there, fur trappers or wildlife control in general, are just full of biology degrees, but they couldn't track their way out of a wet parking lot.
Which brings me on to my next question. What do new entrants into uh, predator control, trapping, what you do, what skills do they usually need to brush up on, JD?
It's tracking, it's sign reading, it's all spending time in the woods, or wherever the environment you want to work, and other environments too. I've been pretty lucky. I've got to live in 11 different states in America, and I've gotten to see the extremes of everything from swamps to desert to high desert to big snowy mountains, and even a little bit near the ocean. I've got to see all those, and I was one of those type of folks that learned kind of arrogantly. I'd get an idea in my head and I'd stick with it. And fortunately, I got to experience enough hardship in those places that I learned the hard way. There are people now you can learn from. You don't have to learn it the hard way, but it's good to have your own. Uh, what's the word? Your own. For a fact. You've been there, you saw it, and you know what this situation is going to require and what are the variables, I guess. And so I would suggest they spend as much time in the environment they are planning on working, so that they know, and they're not just reading books about somebody else's experience, or the biology papers. Are a lot of great knowledge, a lot of hard work goes into those. But I think that sometimes people will get to copying each other's work, and I'm not sure why that is, but the really handy people in the industry are ones that have spent a lot of years grinding it out, and seeing for sure what's the facts, not just what somebody's idea was.
Mm, mm. And JD, you operate in Idaho and Oregon.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Um, how would you describe predator control in those states? Is there much difference between the two states? Do you
there
tend
is. Yeah,
to hunt more? Do you tend to take more wolves in one state than another, or beaver in more than one state or another? How does it work?
sure. So Oregon, I can do predators in Oregon, like coyotes. Coyotes are kind of free game everywhere. You got to be a licensed trapper, and wherever you go. Oregon has more stuff that I don't have a lot of the papers I need, so I don't work in Oregon as much, but I'm close to the Oregon border. I work closely with other Oregon trappers. I've went in on their line and like helped them, or showed them something, and they've come and showed me something. I've got a very close relationship with several Oregon trappers. They have their own challenges I can't really speak to. They have more beaver than we do, and more beaver issues, and I think some of their things are um, always in courts. They're kind of similar to our wolf and our grizzly issue in Idaho. We have more of a big predator issue over here. They have a major wolf issue over there too, but they can't do anything about it. See, Idaho, we get to. We do have wolf seasons, and so there are some huge differences. Um, and the topography changes in an interesting way. We have a river that divides us, the Snake River, and it runs straight north, which is kind of interesting because most rivers you think downhill south, and that's not the way it is here. It runs straight north, and it goes into some massive canyon country. So we share um, a really rugged piece of wilderness on both sides, or not wilderness, but patches of it, and really rough ground. And then it just benches out into agriculture, and or comes up to timber, and then from timber down back into agriculture. We share that. So if you're trapping in, one section of Northeast Oregon, it's going to be pretty dang similar to Central Idaho in some ways, depending on where you are. The South's the same. Our South corner is touching big, long desert stretches. If you're right on the line, you're not going to notice a difference in how you would go about catching, say, a bobcat, or if you were, you know, just anything really that you were after, a coyote or a bobcat. You're going to make that same set the same way as you would 10 feet over here on the Oregon side. It's the same. So there's similarity in topography. There's differences in laws greatly. They're still battling it out over there on some issues that we're pretty lucky to have pretty sewed up over here. Our issues are always bigger stuff. Grizzlies and wolves seem to be everybody's main concern right now. So,
JD, were wolves recently reintroduced into Idaho?
I wouldn't say recently. It's been a while. 95 was when the official release date was, but it kind of, to my understanding, it kind of collided with some natural. We always knew there was some natural migration coming, just in the hub of ranchers and farmers. We knew amongst the talk of the Northwest in general, people would see them while they were hunting elk, or hear them, or thought they saw them or something. We kind of have a pretty good idea that they never really did go away. There was very few of them. We don't think our native uh, wolves in the Northwest, just a basic timber wolf, we don't think they ever really went away. But there was some idea that, like in the 80s, I think there was some natural migration coming down in settling in places like Glacier National Park or something like that. It depends on where you get your source from, but to my understanding, they were going to come regardless. It was just going to be a natural, slow progression, which it should have been, because then the prey base probably could have handled that a little better. They would have learned, the elk and the deer would have gradually learned, and some of the dumb ones would have died, and some of the, and that then it would be true that they just got the weak and the stragglers. But that's not what they did. They dumped out the strongest, best ones they had that they could catch out of Canada. When they did it all in one whack, because they figured the pack would survive better if they had more numbers, and they did that. They, if you track the press releases backwards, it look kind of looks like they made a big scene out of one release, and then at the same time, or maybe even a little bit before that, they were probably kicking off other packs in other places, and that's kind of inside baseball. But I think that's the general consensus by now, because they sure covered a lot of country real quick, and they did what wolves do very well, and they started eating stuff and never did stop. So, they their official starting date that we just say is about 95. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Fascinating. And in terms of state society at large, JD, are there many people coming in from urban backgrounds? Are you getting much pushback from people when you say what you do, or do people understand?
I've been pretty lucky. I'm probably the worst to ask that, because I've never really had a lot of encounters with antis. Like I said, I'm very in this job you have to be very social. You need to. I just don't hide nothing. What I do, I try to educate as much as I can. I don't have anything about what I do that I wouldn't show anybody. I have a reason for it, and I'm coming at it from the animals level. On the animals level, the animal would appreciate it if the animal knew any better. I think if I was a coyote, I would want me coming after you. I'm going to do it the most um, humane and efficient way I can. And so when I talk to people about it, um, I've never really had an issue. I know they're out there. I've got a lot of friends that deal with them all the time, and I'm not sure how that happens. I'm just as much a target as they are, but I've been pretty lucky. I do get people that just come out of nowhere and want to learn to trap that are from the urban environments, and some of them are interesting. Interestingly enough, they are on the fence anti-trappers, and they want to come along and see what there is to it, and they'll stomach riding around with me for a day or so and just make their own conclusion, which that's pretty commendable. That's a cool thing, to be that forward of a thinker that you don't just run in and judge somebody else's lifestyle. You roll along with them and see what's what. And like I said, they never leave my truck not understanding the world a little differently. I make sure of that because, like I said, we're coming at it from the animal's perspective every day on what I do. So uh, we had a pretty big movement with these last few elections we've had over here. There's been I'd almost say like a panic in some of a certain generation. We call them the homesteader generation, and they just kind of woke up one day after college, mid 20s, and decided they didn't know anything about the natural world, and what if something happened? Could they survive? Could they uh, come out, work a tract of land, learn how to milk a cow, and grow a garden and all these things? Well, interestingly enough, trapping come up in those circles, and a lot of them bought properties in these rural towns that trappers like myself work in. And I know I'm not the only one that's had a lot of interactions with those type of folks. The first time they buy 40 meat chickens, and in one night a fox takes them all out. They learn quick. They're like, hey, we have to have an answer for this. Or their prize milk cow calf gets pulled down by a coyote or wolf or whatever, and they're like, okay, we got to know what's going on here. Who do we call? Um, the Every one of them I've talked to has been like, we thought trapping was a part of history. We learned about it in school. It's not a thing anymore. Like, what do you mean you do that as a job? It's like nobody knows. It's crazy. Nobody. I guess they just thought it was just a day in history. They just turned it off. It just stopped happening. And it never stopped. I suspect it'll always be around because of that very thing. Livestock protection and mediation of wildlife between agriculture and even towns. The more we push against the natural homes of these critters, they're going to push back, and somebody's got to be in the middle interpreting all of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fascinating. JD, what would you like to see happen in the next 5 years in your industry, predator control in Idaho? What changes would you like to see?
Well, the big one is, like I said, it doesn't affect me directly all the time. I'm very lucky. I've been working with the smaller critters, and that's where the niche is. Um, the big animals, I would like to see more understanding. We're all borderline exhausted trying to work around these bigger predators and get people that don't live here to understand. Hey, I'm not in your backyard trying to demand that you let this thing live near you. You know, um, I would never do that to somebody. So I would like those type of people, if they could, to get a little more hands-on education. Come out and hang out and see the country and encounter those animals for themselves, and then maybe they could have a real opinion instead of just reading online. Social media, I think needs to ease off. It's a great, beautiful learning tool, but it can go sideways real quick. Everything you say is under a huge microscope all the time. So what I would like to see is people getting more hands-on, experiencing for themselves, get off social media and actually go look at these animals in the wild and make their own assessment so that they're not out there voting for something that's going to basically take, food right out of my family's mouth, essentially.
Mm. JD,
Understanding wildlife.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
JD, where do our knowledge gaps lie regarding predator control in Idaho and Oregon?
The knowledge gaps.
Yes. What do we need to know in order to trap better, more effectively?
Anybody who's going to be in even just a fur trapper, I always recommend working very closely with your state organizations and the biologists. We may not always agree, but they know a lot of things that you're not going to learn if you don't have a biology degree. You could pick things up from them, and then in turn they could probably do to spend a little field time and learn something from each other too. We have the same goals, so we work very good together in most cases. I can't say that's the way in all states, um, but as far as trappers go, we are generally very active in the decisions that are made with our state. And we do that because we're communicating directly with the biologists that are making those decisions. So, I don't think there is much of a gap as long as we're sharing information. If you're going to go out as a trapper and just go try to learn on your own, like I used to, I don't think that's a good way to go. I think you need to be informed. And the same, if you're a young biologist and you want to know your target animal better or your what you're working on, you should go hang out with people that work with those animals every day. Um, and there isn't much of a gap. We're very lucky in Idaho. I think we do a good job with staying close together.
Oh, that's fascinating. JD, to be a predator trapper in Idaho, do you need a degree?
No, you do not. You need licensing. There's licensing, and then you need to understand how to get permits for things that are out of season. Anybody can trap from your general season. For most animals, you can start canines pretty early, like coyotes. You can trap coyotes all year long with just a trapper's license. Our first seasons start November 1st, and then that's for almost everything. Bobcats are a little bit later. Um, we're very coexisting with the hound hunters, the dog hunters in our state. It's a big dog hunting state. So everything trappers do is very closely and communicated with hound seasons. Um, we start a little later on some things to help uh, reassure that certain things aren't risking the dogs. The hound hunters get to run a little later on certain things like bears. They'll have practice seasons where they're not killing anything, they're just running to train the dogs. Nothing's getting hurt. They just run them up a tree. That's just for bears, to my understanding. The cat seasons are different. So when we make a set that's going to catch a coyote, you can't make a coyote set that's not going to catch a dog. So we are very vigilant on that. But the permits are there for the out of season stuff. So you need to know how to get those permits. You have to have, several enforcement officers on speed dial. I've got them on my phone at all times. Any questions I might have before I make a move, I make sure I am within the law. And then when you do that, sometimes you have to stop and go, okay, just because it's legal, is it right? And that's where the job part comes in. Just because I'm right on a county line, I'm out of city limits, X amount away from a road. Do I need to be setting a trap right here that might catch some little old lady's dog while she's walking her dog in the morning on a country road? The answer is no. I'm going to be smart about that, and I'm going to pull that set back off in a place where it's going to still do the job, but not risk even the slightest risk of catching a non-target that's human related.
Oh, he's a barker. Good looking dog. Check day 6, I think. Got a coyote right there a couple days ago. It's kind of a popular cow trail. I just moved the trap over. A lot of coyotes run this line here, so I see tracks here. I just put a blind set in. It's not rocket science. Good looking coyote.
And the number one reason for that is because it's not right. You don't need to be out there hurting people's pets just to do your job. So those permits, if you learn how to get those permits, and then generally the complaints will come through the Fish and Game office first. So like beaver, I said that beaver is a big thing for me. That's what I'm doing right now. Actually, in the next, for the last almost 2 months, and for the next couple weeks, I think we've got a program we're working on. I've been almost 100% beaver.
All right, there's that little island right there where you were picking up that garbage yesterday, and I was standing right here when I talked to you last. Anyway, I said right here by this tree, this is where the freshest stuff was, and I snared one right here. So that's number 2 for the day. But this one right here is the big dog that was making the mess. So about probably pushing 60-pound beaver. Anyway, that's 2. So there you go. A lot deeper than it looks. Get out there too far. Oh, might have got the big female. That's what I was after. If I catch that big female, I'll be happy with that. We can move on, let these ones grow up a little bit. I'm getting down to that time of year where I don't want to get any more kits. Oh yeah, it's a good one. I'd say that's probably a big female for sure. There you go. Just like that. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Extra up. Big as any I've ever seen. You got a little bit of otter sign here too, but it's mostly just big ass beaver caster. I got you cracked up on that. And my favorite number 11, because we're gonna stick that in over here. Well, there's some mink tracks, but right here, we threw a set in last night. Let's see what we got. There we go. Good. He's good sizey and huge. There's a bigger one in here somewhere. I'll take it. to it, dude. See that oil coming out of there? Perfect. We'll keep moving. That's not your typical caster mound set, but it's very effective when you're trying to make as little commotion as possible. These ones on this deal here, just a skosh leery, not too bad, but I'm the only one that's really trapped them, so I know it's my fault if they're too spooky, but definitely have some problem children on this end. So we're just sliding in, being as subtle as we can. Getting them worked out one at a time. A lot of young stuff this year. Not old enough to be spooky, but we just barely caught him and held him right there. Just barely. But fortunately, he is worth just as much as the big ones, because it's all paying gig, right? That's a good set. It should keep producing. Good sneaky set.
A few rock chuck jobs here and there, a few fox jobs, but mostly beaver. So they got a complaint, they send it through the fish and game department, and then I'm on their short list of trappers to contact. So they contact me. And if an officer needs to go out with me and assess it, he will. If he knows me, he'll be like, hey, just go take a look and tell me what you think. You know, I've worked really hard to just get their trust where they're like, hey, just go handle it. I got your permit right here. I'll send it and email it to you. And that's perfect. Okay, that's a good way to go about it. It took me a long time to get that trust. I had to do a lot of jobs and the hard jobs and do them right. And I think I'm pretty lucky. I'm on the other side of that mountain now, so I can kind of relax and just do the work. You know, knock on wood. Nothing's went wrong in a long time. So knowing how to get permits is more important than any degree you could ever get. But I think I got to skip a lot of the book time because I was raised in the wild. I was raised on ranches out far away and in desert and in the mountains, and I experienced that wildlife firsthand. So I didn't need a book to tell me, the stride of a bobcat at a certain age. I didn't need the book to tell me the gestation period of a beaver, necessarily down to the day. I didn't need a book to tell me, what critters mate for life and what don't, and which ones are likely to eat their young. I didn't need that. I got to see all that, so I'll use that against them when I'm trying to catch them. I'll know how to use those behaviors, and I think that's what you can learn with those degrees, is statistics. And I'll reach back in books sometimes and try to figure something out that way. Be like, oh, this is interesting. This animal's showing me a pattern that I've not dealt with much. I wonder what the book says on this, and I'll do some research. And you would be surprised how many biologists cite their work on a specific animal, especially a coyote. They'll cite books that trappers wrote a long time ago, especially, if they're ex-federal trappers. They really pay attention to those guys because they get to go in the field, 365 days a year. They're always in the midst of it. So everything we know about, say, coyote puppies in a den and finding dens, locating dens, and removing dens comes from mostly federal trappers. So those books are the same books that I can buy on Amazon.com, and I do, and I got several. A lot of that knowledge is just as good as any degree you're going to get because it's first hand knowledge.
JD, on that subject, can you recommend a book for somebody just getting into what you do? Trapping.
There are too many to even list. It would depend on the animal. Um, it's more, yeah, anything you want you can find on YouTube these days. I don't think anybody's gonna read the old books, but one of my favorites, it's really cut a lot of corners for a lot of wolf trappers in the state, myself included. It's a book by a man named Frank Glasser. It's called Alaska's Wolf Man, and even though it's Alaskan wolves, uh, there's something about the time period he was there that those wolves behaved very much like the wolves we have here now. There's something about just the way it was. There was a bit of a gap in when they were hunting them up there. I guess that there was a long time where people didn't. I guess it was kind of about the time the natives started coming out of the woods and going to town more, getting town jobs, stopped living off the land. So there were smaller numbers of what would have been the natives, I think, catching them primarily or harvesting them for their own needs, but harvesting them for fur. There and then all of Alaska was just wide open to only sportsmen basically, and there wasn't enough of that going on, so the wolf population somehow got a little bump, and so there was a lot of them, and I think they hired him to go into some of the areas and clean them out.
For a new starter into predator control, seeking a mentor, when is the best time of year for them to contact a busy trapper? What's the quietest time of year for a trapper?
Well, I think it'd be more bang for your buck if you went in the busiest time of year, because uh, it kind of does a trapper a little bit of a service too if you're along and help with the physical aspects of it. So when I take guys, I really always suggest coming during the fur season. So there are some of these contracts I have with ranches that are not like they're not a call. Let's say it's not like I get a call today that, hey, I got a coyote just came and killed this or something, you need to get out here right now. It's not like that. It's just areas where they want beaver or coyotes or anything really kind of thinned out, just monitored. So a lot of these agriculture places, they have it's like a massive food base for these animals to come out of the wild and live on these places, and it's in everybody's best interest we keep their numbers just kind of down, just for a healthier population. So I will schedule that during the fur season so that from November 1st on till March 31st is when most of the seasons end, and I will schedule that so that I can do what we call salvage. When I catch the animal, I'm also getting his fur, and his fur is prime depending on how I timed it. Your coyotes, your fox are a little earlier, from like say October into mid-November, December, and then the water animals are like end of December on till March. So if I need help, that's the time of year I'm running and gunning, and you're going to get a lot of information really quickly. Um, every stop we make, you're going to have an opportunity to learn something, and there'll be catches hopefully, and firsthand account. And secondary, when we're done, we come back to the fur shed, and that fur handling is a very important part to that time of year too. How to take care of things, and I think you get the most knowledge there. And then usually while we're in the skinning shed, then the questions about the business part of it can come into play when everybody's just kind of hanging out at the end of the day and basically watching me skin stuff, and we can talk. And I've never really charged for that. I'm not that good. I don't think that I could charge, but maybe not. But I don't. I just like to get people involved, and usually they just trade me a 6-pack of beer or something for it. We're just, come along, but I put them to work. I make them pack beaver all day long, and it's kind of fun for me. I get to put a lot of gear in places I would normally have to take half a day to get to. I just take 2 or 3 guys and load them up like pack mules. So that's the time of year I suggest. You're going to get a lot more information.
Mm, mm. How would you describe yourself, JD? I mean, driven, ambitious, determined, what?
Well, like I said, when we came back to this area, it was about 8 years ago. I was almost desperate to get any kind of work that I could stay closer to my daughter. I had a little girl, and I guide hunters in the fall. I still do, but at that time I was doing a lot of it, and I was just gone all the time. And in the summertime, I would cowboy and work for ranches, and none of that really ever changed. And I was having a difficult time fitting into anything in a near town environment that was relatable to me. And I kind of came on the trapping deal like something a little extra income one winter. And when I sat down and, like I said before, I realized there was kind of a gap in this area at the time. There was 2 or 3 really good trappers here that passed away or quit right at the same time. So there was a void, and I feel lucky enough to catch on and fill that void. So at that time, I was very driven, very ambitious. I've kind of leveled out now, and I see kind of the greater good in it. And there are some tough years and some tough times of year, and we just try to ride that wave out. And I'll supplement, with other things. I'll build a little fence or shoe a horse or whatever I got to do. But it's very important to stay in the community's eye and be that guy, because when those big jobs show up, you got them. You're the one they're still talking about and doing a good job. So now my drive is less about finance and surviving and more about just being there for the community and trying to be a positive look on it. Like, for instance, a couple of days ago, I went down to a local store, grocery store type place, and there was a domestic bunny rabbit that had been living in the parking lot for like 3 or 4 days, and nobody could catch it, and everybody was worried about it. And so I just went down there on my own accord and caught the rabbit, and got him adopted, had him a home by that afternoon, and he's living his best life and already has girlfriend rabbits. And and in a little bit of a plot twist, I put that on Facebook, like, hey, look, this a trapper did this. Not We're not the monsters that y'all think we are sometimes. So that right there is more my drive these days, is to try to make sure this is still around for the right reasons in the future.
JD, do you do this nowadays for personal satisfaction, for professional recognition, or for the money?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. I mean, you need the money. I mean, nobody can do this for free. The equipment is incredibly expensive. Even if you work on your own, I've got this entire shop here that's nothing but working on repairing traps and building new stuff, and trying to modify things. Money's always an issue. Uh, it is a job. It is a huge part of my only job, my only income. Like I said, I'll supplement it every now and again when I have to. But the money will keep you going when it gets tough. You just got to grit it out and be like, well, we're getting paid here, so it's not like we're not. So make sure that's lined up. Professional recognition, I really thought that was important at one time. I think everybody will go through that stage, especially when you start thinking you're pretty good at it, but you're never going to get it. It's just the way it is. I don't care what industry you're in. They're never. I don't even know where that ends up. Probably after you're dead and in the ground, somebody might be like, "Yeah, he was pretty good at that." I think that's the best you can hope for in this industry. So, and I think a lot of industries are like that. I don't know too many guys that get talked about with reverence while they're still alive. So that's the wrong route to take. I would never recommend going down that road with this deal. And then as far as like, yeah, I do have a little bit of passion for it. It fades every now and again. I have troubles remembering why I'm doing it when it's real hot and the mosquitoes are getting you and the sunshine's getting you, and then other times when it's 9 degrees outside and truck will barely start. And you don't want to do it, but that's with any profession. Like I said, growing up on those ranches, I'm used to that. And I just keep thinking to myself, I'd rather be, it might suck right now getting bit by mosquitoes chasing this beaver through a swamp right now. I'd rather be doing this than on some hot rocky face building fence right now, or riding a bronchi colt and getting bucked off in the rocks. I'd much rather do this instead. So at the end of the day, I can kind of be okay with my choice that way.
That's brilliant. I love that. Absolutely love it. JD, if I move there tomorrow, how do I get into predator control? Do I contact the State Trappers Association and try and do a course? What's the best route into what you do?
Well, like in my state, like I said, it's pretty simple. You've got to go get certified, and that's basically just a state test that you get online, and they'll sign you up for a course, and they'll tell you when that course is. They have them all the time, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, and usually it's at a regional office or something. You go in, you sit with, sometimes it's 20 other students, and you'll sit there and they basically run you through a lifetime of knowledge in 1 or 2 days. The idea is that we have this thing called best management practices, BMP. So BMP standards are understanding that our equipment, it's 2025, our equipment is the best it's ever been. There's no reason to not have good equipment. Even if you can't afford the best, there's ways to make your equipment safer and better for everything all the way around. You should be able to catch a coyote and take him out of that trap alive and brush his foot off, and there should be no blood, no marks, no nothing. That's the way it is now. All this older information of, a trap hurting an animal, that's old equipment and people that don't know no better. So when it comes to the education part, that's the main thing we drive into people's heads. I think when they go through those courses, it's been a long time since I took the course, but to my understanding, and I have friends that teach those courses now, you're trying to make sure they know we have options, and if you're going to do this job, do it right, do it with ethics. It's doing the right thing by the animal and by the job, even when nobody's watching. And that's what that course is all about. And then you learn the basics. You learn what the traps are, water traps, land traps, snares, how to use them, different kinds of sizes, and what they're a set you could use. And then you learn a lot about the animals and their habits. And then you learn about the laws. Like I said, it's not just because it's legal doesn't mean it's necessarily smart. You got to know when to set and when not to. That's covered there. Then once you're licensed, you can do what I do. If you're going to start from ground zero, be prepared to, make a lot of phone calls, and climbing that mountain and getting to be known is very difficult. And you got to be. It's not a job for somebody who's not social, because that's how you get your leads. You have to be available to hear their problems and meet them on level ground. And you will trap for people who don't like trapping, and you're going to have to learn how to have that conversation with them. Now, other states that touch me, they do have a little more education, mostly disease vector. That is something I recommend everybody kind of go down that rabbit hole on their own. I have been through a lot with that. I've gotten, I've contacted with certain diseases that we had to go sort it out in hospital and figure out, antibiotics and what I needed to do to. Animals are just that way. Some of them are unhealthy, and that's why you got the call in the first place.
And now for Have Your Say, the part of the show where I hand over to you. Are you in the United States? Have you attended an Introduction to Trapping course? Did it meet your expectations? What was done well? What could have been done differently? Let us know in the comments below. Does the State Trappers Association provide some kind of a trappers rendezvous, or
Yes.
are there conferences that newcomers should look out for to attend?
Yes. Every state that traps has one. And it's been a surge in the last 5 years. Even states that have them, but they've been kind of inactive. I think there's been some leaders, Idaho being one of them. Our state association's been very aggressive in uh, getting people involved and having big events. And uh, that's one thing I tell people that ride along with me is like, you want to learn more than you ever could about particular animals, go to your fur sales. Usually the fur sales are in the spring of the year after the winter season is over, and people have had enough time to prepare and dry their furs and get them right for sale. You go to those fur sales and you're unlimited amount of knowledge of how many trappers are in that room, and it's fun to just sit down and listen to a bunch of old guys just sit around and talk, and that's pretty cool. And you'll see professionals like myself, you'll see just fur trappers who catch way more than me in numbers because they have no boss, they have no time limit, there's no structure, they're just trapping fur just as much as they can. And then you'll see guys bring in 200-300 coyotes, and that's a guy you want to go talk to about, hey, I have this coyote that I have this trouble with. He was doing this or this. What do you think? And there's that moment right there that you can't learn that in a book. You just can't. So yeah, the state sales, the state fur sales, and then most of your states are now having big conventions. If you join the National Trappers Association (NTA), they have huge conventions all over too, and they kind of encompass all the states. All the leadership that's individually in the states are present there, and a lot of the decisions that are made with the biologists on a state level are made in those circles where people that are representing us, we've elected them to represent us at a national level. That's where those conversations are had. And at any of those deals, they're fun too. I mean, there's skinning competitions and trap setting competitions, and there's what we call demonstrations, where people that stand out as catching a lot of one particular animal will do a demonstration. And if you latch on to somebody that you like their work and you follow their work, and figure out what conventions they're attending, they will be there. And a lot of people will drive from many states away to come just watch one coyote guy demo or one beaver guy's demo. So that's a great way to stay plugged into the trapping community.
Oh, that sounds absolutely brilliant. I wish I lived in the States. I really do.
You bet. Yeah. Come
Um,
visit. I'll put you to work.
um, JD, is there anything that you'd like to add in terms of advice for a newbie who wants to take up trapping? I mean, if they want to take up a trapper's course, have they various options of associations or venues, or is it a case of going straight to the Idaho State Trappers Association and asking about the next course?
Like I said, any state they settle in, or wherever they are, your state's going to have a state deal. If trapping's legal, like obviously California, there's nothing there. I think Colorado's pretty limited, places like that. But if it's a state that's very active in trapping, Idaho, Oregon, Wyoming, Nevada, places like that, you can go to your state, and they'll put you in the right circles. You don't have to just come to just Idaho. Like every state has that. Um, as far as courses go, your only options really that I know of is one on one with a known trapper that's giving instructions. Those aren't really advertised everywhere. A lot of times those guys have a social media presence, and they'll talk to you on there and be like, hey, I'm offering, this year I've got 5 holes open for my coyote long line, and these are the dates, and this is the price, and this is what we'll be doing. Food, lodging, all taken care of. Bring a good attitude and a lot of grit. That's kind of the advertisement. A lot of your state associations can hook you up with those guys. There's not very many of them out there. You do have the Trappers College, which is, I believe that's an NTA deal, and every year they give away scholarships. I know, or at least a scholarship. Um, I don't know a lot of the details on that, but there's certain guys. The teachers kind of change every year. They're usually very seasoned, very very connected, longtime trappers. They're good guys to learn from. So that Trappers College is a very serious deal. They charge a lot of money because you're going to get a lot of information, and those guys are very much the highest level of what we got. And if you just typed in Trappers College, that's you're going to find that. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest doing it my way. Learning everything the hard way is not at all what I would recommend. If I could go back and start over, I probably would hang out with a lot more of those guys. But
JD, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Just if you're a fur trapper, we got a saying: "Don't walk past fur to catch fur," meaning keep your eyes open. And if you're gonna do it for a little more than a hobby, you need to learn how all the animals move in every ecosystem, and be ready to put that work in an efficient manner. And because it's all about timing, there are times of the year when you need to kind of ignore your water line to catch a certain amount of land animals, and there's a time when you need to kind of walk past the land animals to get to the water creatures. But don't miss an opportunity to get that extra every day. Every time I set my line, if I'm not going to step across the coyote track on my way to a beaver lodge, it's just not in me to do that. If I can come out of there with both hands full of fur every day, then I'm pretty happy about that, instead of just walking to my one set and ignoring all the rest. But that's a fur trapper's mentality. As far as wildlife goes, wildlife patrol, be social, have an open mind, be polite, be courteous, learn to speak well with these people, and understand that everything you do represents all of us. If you if you have a victory, that's your victory. You worked hard for it. But if you mess up, that's on everybody. I'm very conscious of every set I make within, reach of humans. Dogs, cats, other pets, little kids. I think everybody who's done this job's had some close calls and learned from it quickly. Hopefully, learned from it that it doesn't always mean you can't get the job done. Like, you're not going to survive in the business, but you got to be creative and you got to find a way. Track the animal, let him show you where he wants to be caught, and there will be a place that's safe if you just use your head. This is not a job for somebody who can't think on their feet and be creative and get as much information about your target as you can before you head off and go just think you're going to solve the world's problems with a conibear trap or something. There's more to it. Be efficient, proficient in all your equipment as well. Cages, footholds, snares, DPs. Nothing's off the table. You gotta know when the right set for the right critter is gonna show itself, and keep working at it until you find that perfect spot.
We've got about 9 minutes.
We can roll with that, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to be able to see them. Okay, we can roll. You just tell me which critter, and I'll grab what it is.
So, beaver.
Beaver. Okay.
Yeah.
So, one of the main traps for beaver is 330 conibear. Okay, that's a body grip trap. And the main thing on them is they get old sometimes, and they will bend. The more you catch, the steel on them will kind of warp. It's in the water all the time, so it rusts. And one thing a trapper can do to be as humane as possible is always have good, solid traps that are a little on the newer side. But make sure you're always testing the springs. Make sure they're always firing. That ensures a really good, solid grip, and the animal will expire a lot quicker the more in shape and newer metal and adjusted parts that these are. So that's your main one. You're going to see pretty much everybody that traps beaver starts with those. They're the most foolproof method. The second most popular. So this is a foothold trap for beaver, and it's seemingly very large, and it is. It's very large. But two things that make like this particular trap pretty good is large pan foot area, you know, and the high, really high compared to a normal size trap. What that ensures is that the beaver is all the way inside the trap before he engages the pan. And then what we call pan tension, you can see that's a little stiff. See how my thumb's got to kind of work to move that, as opposed to like a really loose, like this is an old style. It's converted into a coyote trap, but that would have been a beaver trap back in the day. And see how that just kind of wiggles? That one's kind of stiff. The stiff one ensures he doesn't engage it until he's all the way in. When you catch it above the joint, he cannot twist out. And that's where you see the older style traps. We've evolved, you know, as trappers. This is a more humane holding thing here. It's not going to give him a chance at all to wiggle out. That plus we've understand the use of swivels. That's these right here that are on the base plates of pretty much all your modern traps now. So I'll just use this old one. I use this as an example. See that, how it can just go like that? That's what you want. The old ones were just chained directly with very little swivel point. And if they got caught up on a stick or a rock or something, they would, you know, or a beaver would drag it up out of the water and get caught and tangled. They can hurt their foot, pop it off. That was back in the day. We don't do that anymore. So we've learned, you know, how to make this equipment better. But another thing about your coyote gear. So, for instance, this is called cast jaws. And then you'll see this grip in the middle. And see how the beaver don't have that. You want that beaver to be held a little different. The coyote, he's not going to drown. He's above water. Obviously, he's on land. This right here ensures that he still has blood flow going to his foot. And that's super important, especially when it's cold, so that you don't damage the soft tissues in that foot. And that's what we call a cast jaw, which the more metal that's on this surface area, when it closes, it slows. It still goes fast, but when it hits, it's not a sharp, like gonna break the bone. It's just simply a big connect. Like all they feel is that pressure. And that has everything to do with how strong the springs are on it too. But it's got to blow up out of frozen ground and connect and get locked in behind that joint. And that's super important to canine trappers so that you don't injure that foot. Because if you injure that foot, again, like they did back in the old days, they didn't know any better. So when it got injured, that animal would chew his foot off. That don't happen anymore. This right here is the graded standard for the wolf gear. So you know what they look like. So there's 10-foot of drag right there on heavy chain. And this is your standard wolf. You can see how size difference between that and the coyote trap.
Yeah.
But it's got all the fancy stuff. This is called lamination kit on the jaws. All the spacing, the pan tension, everything is just geared for the comfort of the animal.
And that's 100%. A state-of-the-art wolf trap.
That's the best you can buy right there. Yep.
Wow.
That's the exact same trap that the biologists will use and the federal guys will use. It's the exact same setup that they will use to trap and relocate wolves or what have you, mountain lions. You can hold a bear in this if you do it right, but it's generally not what they use for bears. They're too strong. You really can't hold a bear in much of anything. They use like big culvert traps, things like that for bears. But for wolves, large scale wolf removal programs and relocation, this is the setup. So the same one that the biologists use. So there's no difference between what they do and what I do with the same equipment. This right here is, I did not create that design, but I tweaked it to my liking. I won't tell you the exact specifics, measurements, but I do sell these. That's the only reason. But the most important thing is as close to his body when the snare is closed. By the time it gets down around the beaver, it'll be about like that, about hand width. So this, what we call an inline swivel right here, it is working for the beaver. So as he spins, he's not getting tangled and wrapped up. And this is what we call a relaxing lock right here. So when the snare engages, when he is walking, the way these are what we call loaded, this curvature I put right here, and then a little bit of a bend up here. When I manipulate that cable, you can see it can wiggle around in the wind, water, like in the current, like that. Raccoons and mink and muskrat can run over it, otters, they go through it. But the beaver, as he walks like this, when he engages this outer corner, it jumps shut. So there's a little bit of science to that. And I like a little bigger in my hand, right at that 9-10 inch loop, and it locks in on him. So this relaxing lock right here, when he struggles, it's tight. And when he stops, it'll come off. It'll relax so he can breathe. It's not hurting him. Now, if you was fur trapping, you would want to lock in a little tighter because you don't want that to seesaw around and what we call burn the fur. It would put just a mark in the underfur. But when I'm relocating them, my main concern is their health. I'm not worried about their fur. So this is the ultimate catch them alive beaver snare. This, I mean, it just don't get no better than that. This is your poly snare support right here, inline swivel, and then it'll be on an extension out at 8 to 10 feet. When I set them, I make sure I'm building a situation where they are half in the water and half out. This time of year, it's very hot, and it's really important to check them early, check them every day, check them early, and make sure that they are comfortable. And so if they can get in the water, get a drink.
JD, you are the owner at Northern Advantage Wildlife Control. Thank you so much for being on the Practical Animal channel. JD Brock.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure.